Being raised in a facility, you can't possibly imagine a world of the elite is incredibly glamorous, right? At a reunion I attended, a woman said this to mock me. I was raised in a facility and have no parents. She has always looked down on me, knowing this. In contrast, you're so pitiful. Raised in a facility with hardly any connections, all alone in the world, aren't you? She flaunted her happiness, talking about her engagement to a wealthy heir. Just as I was getting fed up and about to snap, a beautiful woman appeared. My name is Connor, a perfectly ordinary 25-year-old man, but with one difference from others. I don't have parents. I've lived in a facility since I can remember. I don't know much about it, nor do I want to, but apparently, my parents died in an accident when I was less than a year old. It's supposed to be a sad story, but I don't remember their faces or voices, so I can't really feel sad. The teachers at the facility were sometimes kind, sometimes strict. Thanks to them, all my peers grew up to be considerate and decent people. I realized my situation was unusual when I started elementary school and made friends outside the facility. I was always the only one without parents at events like extracurricular activities. At events like sports days and music festivals, the teachers from the facility would come to watch, but they weren't just there for me alone. They came to see all the kids from the facility who attended the same elementary school. At my first sports day in first grade, I felt lonely for the first time for not having blood-related parents. There were other unpleasant aspects of being raised in a facility. Hey, homeless. You don't have a home, do you? That's sad. Some classmates would mock me like this once they knew about my situation. I have a home. That's not a home. It's more like a kindergarten. To me, the facility where I grew up was undoubtedly my home. In fact, it was all I knew, so I even thought it was normal. Besides, I do have a family. What family? You don't even have a mom and dad. I truly thought of the teachers and my peers as my family. Now as an adult, I wonder if blood relations are that important to being a family. But back then, I was too stunned to say anything. One classmate, Catherine, was particularly cruel. She was always bright and the center of her group. Look at this, isn't it amazing? I got it on my trip to Guam. She always had something to boast about after long vacations like summer break, whether it was a family trip or visiting a relative's vacation home. If it had just been her bragging, that would have been one thing. But she'd say things like, "Look, Connor, I got this on a family trip. Had a blast. But you've probably never been on one, huh?" That's how she used to mock me. Using the fact that I was raised in a facility, she probably basked in a sense of superiority. The facility was fun enough, so I didn't envy her travels, but it was still frustrating. I told her many times to stop mocking me, but she never listened. Eventually, I just got used to it and gave up. By some twist of fate, I ended up going to the same high school as Catherine. Even at 16, 17 years old, she continued to ridicule me. I hadn't told my friends about being raised in a facility, but at some point, she let the cat out of the bag. Catherine told me, "Is it true you were raised in a facility?" Yeah, actually, that's true. I wasn't hiding it because I was ashamed. I had been a laughingstock for nearly a decade and didn't want more people to start mocking me. Oh, sorry if that's a sore spot. I just wanted to know if it was true. Huh? What? Unlike Catherine, he didn't change his attitude towards me after finding out I was raised in a facility. No, it's just that usually people look down on me or keep their distance when they find that out. What? That doesn't make any sense. I remember being genuinely surprised by his reaction, something I hadn't expected at all. He was an exception, although not as extreme as Catherine. Most people seem to have prejudices against those raised in facilities. There were others besides her who said hurtful things. But often, when I showed some form of competence, their opinions changed. I realized this was my path and threw myself into studying and sports. My efforts paid off, and I achieved a lot of good results. Gradually, people started gathering around me, and I made close friends I still keep in touch with. Catherine, perhaps finding this amusing, seemed to have continued spreading bad rumors about me, but I stopped caring about her antics. Reacting to her gave her a sense of superiority. Once I consistently ignored her, she eventually stopped coming to me with her boastful stories. As a result of ignoring her, we drifted apart. Once I started working, thankfully, I said goodbye to the strange bond with Catherine. There's no one who mocks me for being raised in a facility anymore. No one even bothers to ask about my family. Thanks to that, I feel comfortable, and now I'm living a happy life. One day after work, I checked my phone and found a long message. It was from a high school friend. What's this? A reunion announcement. The guy who reached out as the organizer was the one who never treated me differently after knowing my situation. A close buddy, and thinking of seeing him after so long got me excited. Long time no see. I'll definitely attend. I replied immediately, overwhelmed with happiness. Minutes later, I received an email of confirmation and details about the venue. Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to it. This is good. Wait a minute. A high school reunion means Catherine, always full of snide remarks and boasts, will be there too. Realizing this, I felt a moment of unease. But soon, I remembered the fun times more and looked forward to reuniting with my friends. On the day of the reunion, I went to the designated pub and found more people gathered than I expected. Hey, Connor. Long time no see. Hey, long time. You doing well? Pretty good, I guess. I sat near the organizer, ordered a beer, and started chatting with my friend. How've you been, Connor? Pretty normal. Works fine, life's usual. Nice to hear that. According to him, some of our classmates weren't in great shape. Some had joined companies with terrible work environments and quit soon after, while others had suffered major injuries at work and were taking a break. As we were sipping our beers and sharing recent updates and reminiscing, I could hear a commotion from the back of the private room. Catherine, that ring is amazing. Really? How did you get it? The center of all the excitement was Catherine. I couldn't see well from where I was, but she seemed to be flaunting a lavish, sparkling ring. Right. You know, my fiancé, he's from a wealthy family, just proposed to me. She boasted, showing off the ring on her left hand to her friends, a smug smile on her face. While the women were buzzing with excitement, my close buddies near me whispered about it. Man, she's engaged to a wealthy heir, huh? Wonder how much that ring costs. Noticing our interest in her ring, Catherine made her way towards us, pushing through the crowd. You guys interested? Look at this, take a good look, she said. Though we hadn't asked, she extended the back of her left hand towards us, the gemstones shimmering in the light. I can't give away too much about his job, she began, and then launched into bragging about her boyfriend. Seems like he had an annual income of $2 million, drove a luxury car, and even owned a vacation home. He used to model and is very kind and handsome. Totally smitten with her. I was almost impressed by her boastfulness, especially with the last part. You guys are just in a completely different league, she added, eliciting annoyance with her unnecessary remark. Then, turning to me with a mocking laugh, she said, being raised in a facility, you can't possibly imagine a world of the elite is incredibly glamorous, right? She took pride in being born into the upper class, which enabled her to marry into wealth. She spoke about her wonderful in-laws and how loved she felt by her fiancé. Her actions were so exaggerated and unpleasant. Compared to that, you're so pitiful. Raised in a facility with hardly any connections, all alone in the world, aren't you? Her ignorance was astounding. You seem to be mistaken about something. I was about to set the record straight. I felt the warmth of someone's arm on my right. At the same time, a familiar sweet scent of perfume drifted towards me. Excuse me, do you need something from my husband? Please, stop any nonsense, she said, restraining Catherine. It was Arya, my fiancée. Oh, Arya, you made it already. Yes, I hurried to finish up. Something popped up and she was supposed to be late. She somehow managed to wrap things up early since she really wanted to come to the reunion. As we laughed and rejoiced in her arrival, our surroundings erupted in surprise. Husband. Wait, Connor is Arya's. Seriously. Man, you did well, exclaimed my close friends. Seeing their reaction, Arya clung to me even tighter. Why? How could someone like you? Catherine's face twisted in disbelief, a stark contrast to Arya's smiling face. Just moments ago, she had been boasting proudly, and now her expression had changed dramatically. Arya had been famous for her beauty since high school. Not only students from our school, but also from other schools who heard the rumors came to confess to her. However, she seemed uninterested in such matters. politely turning everyone down. Being the daughter of a major company's CEO, she was, to me, way out of my league. She was always accompanied by a chauffeur, a burly man who looked like a bodyguard. No matter how much someone admired Aurea, the most they could do was speak to her. Our close relationship started when I got a job. The company I joined after receiving my job offer turned out to be her father's company. "Hey, you're Connor, right? I'm Aurea. We went to the same high school. Remember me?" She approached me one lunch break, a few days in. "Aurea, of course, I remember you." I knew the CEO's last name was Brown, but I never imagined it would be Aurea's father. After working together on various projects at the company, we gradually grew closer as we handled a major project together. "Well, Connor, I hear you've been doing quite well. Your reputation has reached us too," he said. "Thank you. It's an honor," I replied. I thought I was just working like everyone else, but maybe because of Aurea's support, my accomplishments kept stacking up, and I ended up being favored by the executives. Even the CEO started to take notice of me. Then, one day after work, I happened to meet Aurea. Connor, could I have a little bit of your time, please?" "Sure, no problem." Wondering what it was about, I followed her, and we ended up at a stylish bar. It didn't seem like a work-related conversation, and as I watched her, she said something I never imagined. "Connor, I've fallen for you." I couldn't comprehend her words for a moment, even though I recognized them. What do you mean?" "I mean, I'd like to be in a relationship with you." I was beyond surprised, almost unnaturally calm. Never did I imagine that she, whom I considered out of my league, would say such a thing. But should I accept her offer? I was conflicted. "Thank you, I'm happy." I was happy, but I knew I wasn't a match for her. I was raised in a facility, without parents. There must be someone more suitable to stand next to the daughter of a major company's CEO. "I'm really happy, but I don't think I can stand beside you, Aurea." "That's not true. You're wonderful. Even my dad likes you." "Thank you. But still, no." My inferiority complex about being raised in a facility prevented me from accepting her confession. Since that day, there was an awkward air between me and Aurea. Or so I thought, until one day, "Connor, how about dinner tonight?" And on another day, "Connor, want to catch a movie together this weekend?" And yet another day, "Connor, I got us tickets to the theme park." Her persistence was relentless. Moved by her earnestness, I finally overcame my inferiority complex and started dating her. Before we knew it, things progressed quickly, and recently, we got engaged. Now, we're preparing for our wedding next month, juggling it with work. When Aurea explained our story, our friends clapped and congratulated us. Meanwhile, Catherine seemed to twist her face in frustration. "Connor isn't alone in the world. I will make him happy. Besides, the smallest family unit is a couple. A couple is two unrelated people, right?" Aurea posed a question, but Catherine just clenched her fists and groaned. Then, Aurea continued, "So, happiness has nothing to do with blood ties. You kept talking about him being raised in a facility, but so what? We're happy now, aren't we?" Catherine seemed to reach her breaking point at Aurea's words. She grabbed her things, glared at us like a demon, and stormed out of the pub. Some time after that incident, Aurea and I attended a party we were invited to for work. I wondered why a mere employee like me needed to be there, but the CEO said, "You might be a future CEO, so go and learn." He's getting ahead of himself. Aurea was probably somewhere in the venue, mingling with people from various companies. Connor. There's Hudson." "Huh? Oh, right. Let's say hello." In the crowd, I spotted the president of Blossom Construction, a major client of ours. "President Hudson, long time no see." The burly, stern-looking man turned around. Right. It's been a while." Despite his appearance, he spoke with a gentle, soft voice. I had met him a few times through Aurea's connections, always surprised by the contrast between his looks and personality. As we chatted with President Hudson, someone called out to us from behind, "Dad, I've finished greeting everyone." The voice seemed to be addressing President Hudson. "That's good. Networking is important. Now, use those connections, Aaron. Your son is here, I see," I said as I turned to look at Aaron. While trying to place where I knew him from, we said hi to each other. He seemed to recognize me too, creating a strange atmosphere as we faced each other again. Nice to meet you. I'm Connor. Connor. He repeated my name. Eyes widened. Recognizing him, I suddenly remembered. Could you be that Aaron? Connor. It is you, Connor. What, Aaron? You know each other? President Hudson looked puzzled at us. Well, he probably didn't expect connections like this. Yeah, we were together in the facility a long time ago. Aaron spoke softly, and President Hudson smiled warmly. I see, I see. He didn't seem to have any prejudice against being raised in a facility. Mr. Brown has told me you are an excellent son-in-law. If he says so much, you must be doing great. I respect that. I was overwhelmed by such praise, not expecting it. Aaron had left the facility when he started elementary school. Like me, he didn't know his parents, but someone had come to take him in. That someone was President Hudson. Come on, Connor, let's play tag. I'll be it. Oh, Aaron, you run too fast. I can't get away. Ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3. Aaron often invited me to play, even though he was a year younger. I remember playing happily, even if it was a bit forceful. Aaron and I had no blood connection, but we thought of each other as real brothers. When he was adopted, I cried, deeply saddened to lose my closest family. Nearly 20 years later, I never dreamed we'd meet again like this. President Hudson adopted Aaron because they couldn't have children. There were concerns about the company's succession due to his own health issues. He shared how he used the adoption system, showing he doesn't see a facility upbringing as something special. There's no blood relation, but I'm grateful for how they raised me, Aaron said, filling the room with smiles. Looking slightly embarrassed, Hudson continued, from now on, it's my turn to support my parents. To repay the kindness of his upbringing, Aaron is studying hard to be a worthy successor. Knowing that Aaron, who I suddenly parted ways with in childhood, is now living happily like this, brought me immense joy. Then a woman appeared. I remembered her voice from a recent, unpleasant encounter. Aaron, sorry to keep you waiting. Wait, what are you two doing here? It was Catherine, dressed in an excessively flashy dress. That's my line. What are you doing here? Arya said, stepping smoothly between me and Catherine. Since the day of the reunion, she seemed wary of Catherine. Why can't a fiancée be at a party with her partner? Catherine retorted sarcastically, clinging to Aaron's arm as if to flaunt it. So, the wealthy heir she was engaged to was Aaron. Our strange connection with Catherine had become almost eerie. As I was thinking this, Aaron asked curiously, Aaron, you know Connor and Arya? Well, yeah. These two were my high school classmates. Catherine explained, her speech not matching her elegant appearance. Really? That's surprising. I have a connection with Connor too. He's like a brother to me. Haven't seen him for about 20 years until today. Huh? Catherine frowned, seemingly unable to grasp Aaron's words. More than being angry, she seemed unable to comprehend his words. Like a brother, but he's just a pitiful guy from a facility, right? Why would you, Aaron? Aaron, that's a mean way to put it, Catherine. Aaron, also raised in a facility, was visibly shocked by her words. I told you I was adopted, right? Before that, I was in the same facility as Connor. Seeing his saddened expression, Catherine stood there, stunned and trembling. Hudson, with a stern demeanor, was the one giving her the sharpest look. Even though his glare wasn't directed at me, it was intimidating enough to make me shiver. Catherine, do you have a prejudice against being raised in a facility? Well, I wanted to say something too, but I was lost for words in this terrible atmosphere. Then Arya spoke up. She's been mocking him since high school. Even at the recent reunion, she said horrible things to Connor. Well. Catherine tried to make excuses but was intimidated by the cold stares from Hudson and Aaron, and she ended up looking down. After a silence, she finally spoke up, tears in her eyes. It's not that. Her voice, usually loud and boastful, was now so faint it seemed like it might disappear. It's not that. I was just envious. Catherine's parents were remarried to each other, and she was her father's child from a previous marriage. Around the time she started elementary school, a boy was born to her parents. My parents only cared for my younger brother. They never showed me any love. She was provided with food, clothing, and school supplies. Though it felt like an afterthought, she even went on the family vacations she used to brag about. But compared to her brother's treatment, it was like night and day. She felt unloved because she was not their child together, thinking she didn't matter to them, and became resentful. I wasn't abused, but I was even forbidden from interacting with my brother. So I never understood what a family or siblings were supposed to be like. Then she met me, Connor, and learned somehow that I was raised in a facility with no blood relatives. She had a family, but no place at home. I had no family, but I had a place where I felt at ease. Seeing me with something she lacked, she couldn't help but pick on me. So I pretended to be bright and boasted about everything. I just wanted to create a place for myself at school. Catherine. She had lined up boastful stories and blatant lies, trying to create a circle where she was admired. Desperately gathering friends, she continued to seek her own place. Yet, there I was, a facility-raised kid with no possessions, enjoy life and make friends. As I started doing well academically and gradually earned trust, her jealousy grew beyond her control. Still, you never seemed to care. I had ignored Catherine simply because it was a hassle, but in her eyes, it appeared as if I had matured. It's not like I didn't care. Her persistent fixation and making a scene just felt pathetic, and eventually, she stopped attacking me. Then why did you say those things to Connor at the reunion? Ari asked sharply. Catherine, on the verge of tears, mumbled her response. I got carried away. Aaron proposed to me, and I got the ring. That's why I said those things. Her tears smudged her beautiful makeup, but she didn't care. Suddenly, she turned to me and apologized. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everything I've done. Catherine. Her apology seemed sincere. Not just words, but it felt like it truly came from her heart. However, I couldn't easily forgive over a decade of harassment with just an apology. Catherine. I'm happy now that I've been adopted, but being in the facility wasn't a misfortune. There were many kids like me, understanding each other's situations, supporting and living happily. The facility was home to children with various circumstances. Being in a facility, there were various circumstances, but we deeply understood each other and happily supported each other. There was some loneliness in not having parents, but it was never about being alone or unhappy. Right, Connor? Yay, that's right. I smiled a bit at Aaron, who had echoed my thoughts, then turned my gaze back to Catherine. She looked down, realizing there was no way to undo the past. Catherine, I'm sorry. I just can't sort out my feelings right now, so I need some time to think about the marriage. Erin's words widened her eyes, but she didn't protest or cause a scene. I'll call you a taxi, so go home and think things over, Erin said with a firm attitude, though it must have been hard for him to say that. He probably said it, considering that it wasn't just him who was looked down upon for being raised in a facility. Catherine quietly agreed with a simple okay and left without making a scene. Later, Aaron told me that his engagement with Catherine had been called off. It was she who had proposed to end it. He still couldn't bring himself to dislike her completely. Certainly, considering Catherine's family situation, I feel more sorry and angry at her. I thought so, but Arya felt differently. I don't sympathize with her at all. Her family situation and her continued harassment are separate issues. Until it's clear she's truly remorseful and has changed, just leave her alone. Well, maybe that's true. By the way, Arya, you seem pretty harsh on Catherine, don't you? It had been bothering me how cold Arya had been towards Catherine at the reunion and the recent party. I wondered if there was some history between them, so I asked. Her response was slightly pouty. It's just a rivalry, nothing more. Rivalry? In high school, I thought she liked you, Connor. She was being sarcastic, trying to get your attention. Arya said this with a bashful smile. So, she had been paying attention to me since then. Arya, admired by everyone, had actually been thinking about me all this time. I see. Feeling a mix of surprise and happiness, I looked at Arya fondly. Remember at the reunion when you said happiness has nothing to do with blood relations? That meant a lot to me. The fact that Arya had become my family, and her family had been so kind to me, made me incredibly happy. I believe what's important in a family is the bond. Yeah, I agree. We should always remember that. Saying this, we shared a smile. At our wedding, as I had no immediate family, Arya and I had a small ceremony at a church, just the two of us. The reception, due to company arrangements, was planned to be grand. Our high school friends, including Aaron, were going to attend. As I recited my vows, I pledged not only to God and Oria but also to myself. No matter what happens, I want to cherish my family and deepen our bond. I aspire to be a person who everyone who supported me can be proud of. As we promised each other our future, divine light shone through the stained glass. I was suddenly summoned to the CEO's office. You could have made it on time, right? Don't tell me you failed to deliver on time because you took a detour. Are you out of mind? I need a due explanation on this matter. The CEO was livid. I had no choice but to accept his accusation, I thought. What I could do was just remain silent. Giving me the silent treatment, huh? Well, fine. You're fired. Pack your things and leave. That was the decree from the CEO. Even though I was braced for it, I was so despondent that I couldn't move from the spot. At that moment, the phone in the CEO's office started ringing. The CEO, visibly annoyed, said, "What is it? If it's not urgent, call me back later," intending to hang up. However, he continued, "What? You're coming now." As I was thinking someone was coming, I hurried to leave the room, but the CEO paused me. "Hold on. There's someone I want you to meet. My name is Lucas Johnson. In high school, I had close friends, namely Madison, Ray, Ember, and me. We four would hang out after school, routinely stopping by the karaoke and arcade before heading home. Our friendship began in the first year of high school during an art class. We were randomly assigned to groups of 4 to create a project. We hit it off when we started talking and even gathered on weekends to work on the assignment. Even after completing our project, the 4 of us continued to hang out together. We were going through a rebellious phase then. I often went against my parents or got into tangled relationships with friends from elementary and middle school. However, as long as I was with these 3, I wasn't afraid of anything. I was happy with such friends. Their presence became incredibly important to me, to the point where I felt they were all I needed. That's how we spent our high school days. Our friendship was growing stronger, and it didn't change in sophomore year. However, during the winter of our senior year, just before graduation, I witnessed something out of the blue. It was an unusually cold day, with weather that seemed like it would bring snow at any moment. I headed to the rooftop, hoping that snowfall would start. As I was climbing the stairs, the door was left open. Wondering if someone was there, I peeked in cautiously. There I found Ray and Madison. They apparently talking about something serious, so I didn't have the courage to speak up. Just as I was about to stop spying, I heard, "I really fell for you." My hand froze on the doorknob as I heard the shocking conversation. Ray's voice sounded pained, almost heartbroken. So, Ray had feelings for Madison. Ray was slim, tall, and what many would call handsome. I knew he was popular with the girls. He used to receive boxes of birthday cakes from his admirers and would jokingly ask for help eating them. I realized I harbored a hint of jealousy towards Ray. From that day on, I became cautious around Ray and made sure not to be alone with Madison. Later, I heard that Madison thought she was being avoided by me and felt down about it. Indeed, I caused her to misunderstand due to my shallow thoughtfulness. We had been close friends without any concern for gender. However, I abruptly started to avoid being alone together. She couldn't be blamed for this. I later regretted my attitude that caused her misunderstanding, but at the time, I was too busy hiding my feelings for Madison and my jealousy towards Ray. Carrying such a strained relationship, we graduated from high school. I pursued my long-held dream of becoming a manga artist and went to a renowned vocational school. Consequently, I moved away from Ray, Madison, and Ember, who stayed in our hometown. Initially, leaving my close friends and the ones who were my emotional support behind, I felt lonely and anxious. However, I never returned to my hometown, getting caught up in the allure of New York. 2 years after I left my hometown, I finally got a message from Ray. "Are you coming back for the high school reunion? It's been a while. Let's meet up." I had just secured a position as an assistant to a manga artist I admired, and my job hunting had settled down, so I decided to return for the ceremony. On the day of the high school reunion, I was excited to meet all 3 of them, but Madison wasn't there. I heard about a class after party, but I wanted to catch up with Ray and Ember more. Ray had become even more handsome, and as for Ember, she was married and expecting a baby. After some small talk, I asked Ember if she knew why Madison wasn't there. "She's unreachable. I tried calling her, but her number is no longer in service," she said. When I attempted to reach Madison, I discovered that her number was indeed no longer in use. We speculated about her well-being but ultimately assumed she must be doing fine. My concern about her was still on my mind, so I visited Madison's family home the next day. However, I only found that it had been demolished. I asked neighbors where the family moved to, but even the neighbors didn't know their whereabouts. Allegedly, the family just left. I tried asking at cafes and libraries, which were our favorite places, but couldn't find any trace of her. With a heavy heart and unanswered questions, I returned to New York. After finishing my studies, I graduated and officially started working as an assistant to the manga artist, Mr. Anderson. The work was far from glamorous, often requiring all-nighters, but the joy of working in manga and my admiration for Mr. Anderson helped me overcome the challenges. Whenever I had a break, I would work on my own manga drafts. Each time I finished a draft, I sought feedback from Mr. Anderson, only to be bluntly told, "It's not worth reading." Initially, I consoled myself with thoughts like, "I'm still young, it's okay," or "it's just a lack of experience." With time, surely. But no matter how many times I presented my work, it was always harshly criticized. Out of frustration, I cut back on sleep to write drafts daily, only to be ignored eventually. Perhaps that's why after working 8 years as an assistant, drawing manga became a growing pain for me. I could still imagine stories and characters in my mind, but I just couldn't bring myself to draw them. Many seniors and juniors who had been beating the deadliest deadlines had left, and before I knew it, I had turned 30, still an assistant. I thought, it's time to quit. Then, I called my parents. I faced reality and admitted that I don't have the talent to be a manga artist. I've decided to give up on my dream and look for a job, I told them. They seemed relieved and happy with my decision, though they never wanted to crush my dream. They couldn't bear to see me falling apart, both mentally and physically. They were unsure when to suggest giving up. Allegedly, they actually felt relieved upon learning my decision to giving up my dream. Though I resigned from my assistant job, I was wondering what to do next. Then, a senior I met during my assistant days introduced me a publishing house called Crescent Books. At the interview, I saw a familiar face. After a series of questions and answers, my old memories surfaced. The familiar voice I had heard during school events. That's it. It was Madison's father. He didn't seem to recognize me, but I remembered him, leading to an awkward and tense interview. After about 30 minutes of questioning, the interview ended. I thought I hadn't made it, but a week later, I received a job offer. To celebrate my new job, I decided to treat myself to a night out alone. While on the train, contemplating my plans, Ray contacted me. He was on a business trip to New York and asked if I wanted to grab a drink that night. There was no reason to decline his invitation, so I headed to the designated pub. Ray was already there when I arrived. He greeted me cheerfully, saying, "Long time no see. Since the high school reunion, right?" But I was more taken aback by his dramatic change. Ray, with his hair cut, suntanned, and more muscular, looked like a different person and somewhat intimidating. However, as we talked, I felt the same old Ray, and a sense of relief washed over me. Ray and I had a great time catching up on the past few years and sharing our latest news, including my new job. On our way back to the station, Ray suddenly stopped and confessed, "Actually, I like men." His unexpected revelation did surprise me. However, I responded, "Ray, whoever you like, you are still you, right? You really caught me off guard by coming out of the closet." Ray looked relieved and whispered, "I haven't told my family yet." He mentioned that only Amber and Madison knew. He had to come out to them during high school because they kept trying to set him up with friends. That made me wonder about that day on the rooftop. Then Ray said, "By the way, did you know Amber moved to New York after getting married? I'm in town for a while too, so how about the three of us get together for a drink?" Later, I got in touch with Amber. A week later, we headed to a pub. Amber hadn't changed a bit, and we spent the evening reminiscing about old times. However, as soon as I mentioned Madison's name, Amber said, "It's better if you don't meet Madison." I was puzzled, but with alcohol clouding my judgment, I let the comment slide. The next day, I wondered, what did she mean by better not to meet? I thought no one knew where she was. I planned to ask about it next time. But my new job at the publishing company kept me so busy that I eventually forgot about it. One summer evening, as the office was sweltering, suddenly the electricity, computer, and air conditioning all went out. Apparently, it was a power outage. The cause was unknown, and it would take hours to fix. Fortunately, it was evening, and voices from various departments started announcing, "Everyone can leave now." However, my boss shouted, "Oh no, this data needs to be submitted by 6 p.m. today, or it won't make the publication." Hearing this, other employees quickly left, leaving me behind. My boss pleaded, "Can you rush this USB to the printing company within an hour?" It seemed impossible, but checking the train schedules, I realized I could just make it if I ran. So, I took the USB from my boss, saying, "If I run now, I might just make it in time." As I sprinted towards the station, I saw an elderly lady at the station's rotary map, asking passersby for directions. But, being in New York, where everyone is busy, no one stopped to help her. Even I, pressed for time with the USB, contemplated ignoring her. I glanced at her and continued on my way. But I couldn't leave the elderly lady struggling in the sweltering heat, so I turned back to help her. She was visiting her grandchild but had forgotten her cell phone and couldn't contact anyone, leaving her lost and confused. She had a notebook with the meeting place jotted down, but navigating the complex area around New York Station without a map app seemed daunting. After checking her destination, I found it was a cafe about a 15-minute walk away. Walking slowly to match the pace of the lady with a bad knee, it took us about 30 minutes to reach the cafe. As we entered, she pointed to a table, where a long-haired woman wearing a mask was seated. The woman hurried over, exclaiming, "Grandma, I was so worried. You weren't answering your phone, and you were late." Apparently, this woman was the grandchild she was supposed to meet. "Sorry, I left my phone, but this kind man helped me get here," the lady explained. The lady explained to her granddaughter why she was late. "Oh, is that what happened? Thank you so much for helping my grandmother. I'd like to express my appreciation properly later. Could you give me your contact information?" I was in a rush and tried to decline, saying, "Please don't mind, I have to go," but she insisted, "I'm sorry for keeping you, but please let me thank you." So, reluctantly, I gave her only my business card. Looking at my watch as I left the cafe, it was 5:55 p.m. With only 5 minutes left until the deadline, I knew I wouldn't make it. Regretfully, I called my boss to apologize for my detour and the missed deadline. My boss lamented over the phone, then warned, "This was our best-selling author's manuscript. We barely got it in time, and now we might have to postpone publication. You might even lose your job over this." Shaken by nervousness, I went to work the next day and was immediately called into the CEO's office. There I found Madison's father, the CEO of the company. I knew he was an important figure, but I hadn't realized he was the CEO. Bracing myself for the consequences of yesterday's actions, I wore a remorseful expression. "The power outage was unavoidable, but you could have made it on time, right? I took a detour is what you're going with. At least try a more convincing excuse," he bellowed in anger. Initially, I thought about telling my boss about the old lady, but as a new employee, would he believe me? Or would it just sound like an excuse? I knew there was a high chance I wouldn't make the deadline, yet I chose to help the lady. The truth was, my decision led to missing the deadline. So, I accepted the outcome without a word. Silent, huh? "Well, fine. You're fired. Pack your stuff and leave," he declared. Despite my resignation, I was still struck with despair and couldn't move. Despite my preparedness, I was numbed with despair and couldn't move from the spot. Just then, the phone in the office rang. The CEO, looking annoyed, was about to dismiss the call, saying, "What is it? If it's not urgent, please call back later." But then he continued, "What? You're coming now? You're asking if Johnson is here? He's actually in my office right now." As I was thinking someone was coming, I hurried to leave the room, but the CEO paused me. "Hold on. There's someone I want you to meet." In the tense atmosphere that had just been filled with hostility, waiting for the visitor felt like hours. While the CEO seemed deep in thought, I anxiously awaited the arrival of the visitor. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the door, and a woman's voice said, "Excuse me." The CEO invited them in, and the elderly lady from yesterday and a woman entered the room. In my confusion, The CEO introduced them as his mother and daughter. The elderly lady explained, "I'm sorry to trouble you, but I wanted to thank you again. After you had left us yesterday, I overheard you talking about a deadline. I thought I might have caused you to miss something important. When I looked at your business card and saw that it was my son's company, I was astonished. I asked my granddaughter to find Mr. Johnson, and she told me he was in the office. I asked her to make sure you stayed." The granddaughter then led her grandmother to a chair and turned to me. "Long time no see, Lucas." Hearing Lucas, I realized this woman was Madison. In my haste yesterday, and with Madison wearing a mask, I hadn't recognized her, but there was no mistaking her voice. I was sure of it. Madison then formally addressed the CEO. "Lucas helped my grandmother, who had forgotten her phone and was lost at the station. That's why he was late. He did nothing wrong." The grandmother added, "It's rare to find someone so genuinely kind and thoughtful. You're not really thinking of firing him, are you?" After hearing their statements, the CEO relented and said, "All right, but the fact remains that we have a loss in magazine sales, and an author is angry. Lucas and I will personally apologize to them. That's how we will settle this. Are you okay with that?" Thanks to Madison and her grandmother's persuasion, I managed to avoid being terminated. Days later, after we personally apologized to the stakeholders, the CEO invited me for a drink, saying, "Let's grab a drink, just a little." Initially, I was extremely nervous, but within an hour, we had both warmed up to each other. Then he began reminiscing about high school days. I never would have guessed that the Lucas who used to be close with my daughter was the same Lucas here. "You've changed a lot since then. Now, I speak as Madison's father, not as the CEO." I could see sadness in his eyes. Then the reason we lost a contact with Madison was revealed. Madison has been through a lot because of me, leaving scars that won't heal. Since she was 19, she has been shutting down to the point that she never goes out of the house. When we moved the headquarters to New York, she was kept to herself and remained heavily introverted. "Would you mind talking to her? She might open up to you." He then gave me Madison's current contact information. I asked, "Is it okay to contact her without her permission?" He assured me, "Madison knows your contact. The recent incident was the first time she talked to me in a while. I believe you can heal her emotional wounds." On my way home, I called the number her father gave me. After a few rings, just as I was about to hang up, thinking she wouldn't answer, I heard, "Lucas," on the other end. "Yes, it's me. It's been a while, Madison," I replied enthusiastically. She laughed. "Calling at this hour? I thought it was a prank call." We chatted briefly, and then I took the plunge. "Would you like to meet up, just for a little while?" Madison's laughter stopped. Hesitantly, I asked, "Madison," and heard a deep breath on the other end before she accepted. "Okay, but only at night." We planned to meet on the next evening. We met at a small cafe I had taken her grandmother to. It was cozy, with dim lighting creating a pleasant atmosphere. There, I found Madison wearing a mask despite the heat. She said, "I like this cafe. It's one of the few places I enjoy. I find the dimness calming." I know, that sounds strange. We spent the time catching up on old times, despite my curiosity about many things. After a while, Madison said with a self-deprecating laugh, "Lucas, you're still so kind. If I were in your shoes, I would have definitely asked, 'Why are you wearing a mask in this heat?' Or you can take off your mask inside the shop." As I struggled to respond, Madison removed her mask, revealing a large burn scar on her chin. She said, "I prefer hearing comments like 'That's disgusting.' How pitiful, rather, in dealing with unconscious stares. They're cruel, aren't they? You can't say anything back, can you?" And stood up to leave. I instinctively grabbed her arm to hold her. Surprised, she turned back, tears in her eyes, and said, "I didn't want you to see this scar. I showed it myself. I'm sorry." Then, she pulled away and left. I was left speechless, unable to do anything but stand there motionless. For a week after meeting Madison, I was haunted by unease. Then, I received a call from Amber. I answered but couldn't bring myself to talk much. Amber apparently noticed something was off and asked, "What's wrong? You don't sound like your usual self. You sound sick." I confessed, "Actually, I met Madison." Amber said, "Oh, you met Madison? Hey, Ray and I are meeting at the end of the month. Why don't you come too? It'll cheer you up." 2 weeks later, I visited the address she gave me. Ember, her son, and Ray welcomed me. As we consumed bottles of beer, we became talkative. Ember suddenly revealed, "I'm getting divorced." We were shocked, but Ray asked, "How long were you married?" "Since I was 20, so it's been 11 years. My son is 10, she replied. "Wait, we're 30 now." She married at 20, and it's been 11 years. I exchanged a puzzled look with Ray. Ember then confessed, "Sorry for the shock. Actually, I'm a year older than you guys. I was retained in high school for a year." Ray then said, "Then I'll confess too. I'm gay." Feeling the mood lighten, I joined in. "I've always liked Madison." Ember teased, "We knew that already. It was obvious." After we calmed down, Ember said, "We all have things we don't want to say, but if not saying them means drifting apart, then that relationship wasn't much to begin with. It's different when others talk about you without knowing the truth." She married a man 10 years her senior. She alleged that he was charming but unfaithful and had no one to consult about her estranged relationship. Upon hearing about my visit to Madison, she decided to file for divorce. Ray then revealed, "I was told by Madison not to give her contact to Lucas. We've been meeting, just the three of us. I still don't know how to approach Madison, but she's my friend, and that won't change." We all agreed with her. "Tomorrow, I'll hand my husband the divorce papers and start a new life here with my son. You guys should also take a step forward." With that, we called it a night. On the way home, Ray mused, "Ember was really positive. I think I'll come out to my family." I nodded in support. A month later, I mailed Madison, Ember, and Ray, "How about we have our high school reunion after a decade, just the four of us?" Ray and Ember quickly agreed to attend, but there was no response from Madison even after a week. On the day, we rented a hall at the Civic Center for our exclusive high school reunion. That morning, Ember texted, "I have to take my son to the hospital, so I'll be late." Ray and I arrived at the venue together. Even after 15 minutes past the scheduled time, Madison hadn't shown up. As Ray and I were setting things up, the door suddenly opened, and two figures appeared in the spotlight. It was Ember, leading Madison. Madison was wearing a bright red dress and was not wearing a mask. I complimented her, "Madison, you look beautiful," and encouraged her to join us on stage. I handed her a certificate which I had prepared for her. She looked surprised. "It wouldn't be considered a high school reunion if any of us weren't here," I said, smiling. Madison, in turn, smiled through her tears. After wiping her tears, I gathered my courage and confessed, "I've always loved your smile, Madison, scars and all. Stop showing off. I just got divorced, you know. A little consideration, please." Ray and Ember said, laughing, as they embraced us. Our smiles, brighter than ever, filled the stage. Today was the day I planned to tell Madison's father about our relationship, but Madison remained downcast, and her father seemed uneasy. I boldly spoke to her, "Madison, it's okay. I'm here for you." While trembling, Madison tightly gripped my hand and began to speak, "Dad, about my burn. I'm truly sorry for that. I never meant to involve you. Hate me all you want. I'm just grateful you're still my daughter." Madison, apparently overwhelmed and froze by his intensity. I held her hand firmly, reassuring her, "It's okay, everything's fine." Then Madison took a deep breath and clarified, "No, you've got it wrong. It's not your fault, Dad. It was Mom's fault." During her outburst, "I never blame you. Don't apologize me like this. It just makes me feel guilty." As Madison recounted, her burn scar resulted from a dispute between her parents. Her mother accidentally knocked over a kettle, spilling boiling water. Despite this, her father placed blame on himself. Madison developed a sense of guilt and eventually withdrew socially. After Madison mentioned that she didn't blame her father, he asked, "So, you don't hate me? How could I hate you? You raised me with so much love." Madison replied through tears. In front of my eyes stood a father and a daughter, finally reclaiming lost time together after years. Everyone carries unspoken emotional scars, but not discussing them isn't necessarily a sign of trust. If you discover someone's hidden pain, what would you say? The answer varies, and only the person experiencing it knows what is right for them. Therefore, I believe that being there for someone is often the best answer, and I continue to support Madison. Tom's wife probably won't be able to have kids. That's why you shouldn't marry an older woman. That's what my boss Smith told me at the company where I restarted my career at 40. I was shaking with anger and demanded he retract his statement, but he didn't even realize his mistake. Worse yet, at the company's founding anniversary party, he and his wife insulted me and my wife. Oh, is this Tom's mother? I thought she was his mom, not his wife. As a small crowd gathered and quieted down, the CEO came running over with a pale face. I never expected to meet here. I'm Tom, and 40-year-old. I work as a medical equipment service engineer. The company is a major player in the industry. I joined the company last year as a mid-career hire, so this is my first year. I've decided to work here for a long time, so I'm striving hard every day. In general, people tend to be accepted regardless of their age or number of job changes. However, when it comes to the department head named Smith, it was different. He gave me skeptical looks. Even with engineering experience, moving jobs at your age, did you make a big mistake at your last job, or are you planning to leave here soon too? I guess he had his reasons for thinking the way he did when I joined the company at 40. I had been an engineer at other companies until my late 20s, but after that, I spent time abroad until I turned 39 last year. Initially, I went on a working holiday to Germany, where my sister lived after getting married. Then, for about 10 years, I lived in various places like Africa and the Middle East, working with Doctors Without Borders. My role in Doctors Without Borders was that of a logistician. A logistician is responsible for procuring and managing supplies and equipment needed for aid. This also involved ensuring transport and travel routes for patients. I was a non-medical staff member working alongside doctors. When I first went to Germany, it was just a one-year working holiday, a light-hearted desire to see a bit of the world while young. Having worked as an engineer in America for over 5 years, I couldn't picture spending my entire life at the same company. And that first experience abroad was more shocking than I expected. It was a stark contrast to the flexible America, where everything required my own responsibility. People are very straightforward and punctual, which motivated me to be hardworking. Although German people are generally introverted, that didn't make me feel isolated so bad. I ended up loving the different surroundings from American culture. Using all my abilities to live each day was fun for me. I regretted not experiencing living abroad earlier, like my sister. She moved to Germany for college, got a job, and married there. She said to me, "Tom, you're just like me, more alive living abroad than taking it easy in America. Why don't you come back after your working holiday is over?" I deeply felt the same way. So, after safely spending a year and returning to America once, I was preparing to go back to Germany while working part-time. It was then I came across some job information that decided my future. I saw a recruitment ad for Doctors Without Borders staff. It's a job that involves traveling to places around the world where medical care is inaccessible, living there while helping people. It's a job dedicated to providing labor for people suffering from conflicts, natural disasters, and poverty. As I researched, I found they were recruiting electricians, architects, and also medical equipment service engineers. For each of these professions, practical experience was essential. Having experience as an engineer, I filled out the application and applied right away. In the interview, they asked in detail about my motivation. I want to support healthcare with what I can do. I want to use my English skills, physical strength, and mental fortitude, everything, for the sake of others. I spoke passionately and was accepted. After that, I was registered as a dispatch staff and participated in domestic training. There was more than half a year until the overseas training, so I kept working part-time during that period. My first dispatch was to the Middle East and Africa. In the town where I was sent, there was a shortage of vaccines for infectious diseases, and many people were becoming severely ill from diseases that could be easily treated in America. The medical team's mission was to vaccinate all the children in the town center. I was in charge of managing the vaccine transporters and drivers. Just transporting the vaccines was a very difficult task in that town. The road conditions were terrible, and it was hard to manage the temperature of the vaccines under the scorching sun. The vaccines that finally arrived safely were ruined when the town's power supply was cut off. Interactions with the drivers were also challenging. Not everything could be communicated in English. leading to misunderstandings and sometimes arguments. But when I finally completed the mission, I was filled with a sense of happiness. The unity I felt with the doctors, staff, locals, and patients I worked with was an irreplaceable sense of achievement. By that time, I was almost 30 and had decided to make this work my main job, forgetting about returning to my old company or America. Over the next 10 years, I grew not just as an engineer, but also as a general logistician, a staff leader, able to manage the dispatched staff. There were many dangers, and I even fell seriously ill myself, but I felt like I had found my true calling. Being single and unattached, I thought I'd keep performing these noble medical missions and live this way forever. However, I met a woman last year, and luckily we got married. Her name is Susan, and she works as a doctor with Doctors Without Borders. We worked hard together on the same team, and at some point, we realized we were attracted to each other. She told me she had feelings for me, but didn't talk about anything beyond that. "I'm 10 years older than you," she said. Yes, she was 49 at the time, 10 years older than me at 39. I always felt a bit odd about her saying that. Susan had been in this line of work longer than me, so she should know that age difference doesn't matter. There are plenty of couples with significant age gaps abroad, and it's not unusual for the woman to be older. At least, I don't think we need to worry about the age difference. To me, she is not only a respected doctor but also a beautiful and beloved partner. "I'm seriously thinking about marrying you, Susan," I said, making my intentions clear repeatedly. But she wouldn't say yes. So, I thought there might be some other reason besides age, but I didn't ask further. One day, our medical team started an emergency mission. A hospital in a conflict zone was in danger. We had to safely transport pregnant women waiting to give birth to another area. I was busy securing enough fuel for the transport. After managing to transport everyone safely to another hospital, I realized she hadn't arrived at the new location. The local staff told me Susan stayed at the original hospital. She said she wouldn't return for a while, despite the risk of the hospital being caught in the conflict. I rode a bicycle tens of kilometers back to the original hospital. There, I found her trying to make scared little children laugh. They were the siblings of the babies about to be born. We could only transport a minimum number of people, leaving behind children with many siblings. Knowing the risks, she stayed to comfort these children. If she was staying, I decided to stay with her. She thanked me with a troubled smile. That night, after the children had fallen asleep, she shared her story. "I have an older sister. When we were kids, I was frail, so our parents paid more attention to me than my sister. I always thought she must have felt lonely. Of course, those in weaker positions should be helped first, but helping them sometimes means sacrificing others. These children here, separated from their mothers and siblings-to-be, must feel so alone." After getting my medical license, I left home in America. I was healthy, so I hoped my parents would start paying more attention to my sister. I hadn't been back in a long time, but I hope they are doing well, getting along. Hearing this, I felt I understood the reason behind her remarkable character. Her strong sense of self-sacrifice stemmed from her concern for her older sister. Perhaps she believes she shouldn't be happier than her sister. If she can't bring herself happiness, then I'll give it to her. The next day, as a general logistician, I confirmed the budget and devised a way to transport the remaining children to the new hospital. I managed to do it. With no more worries for the left-behind children, Susan moved to the new hospital. There, I proposed to her again. "In return for you sacrificing so much, I decided to work harder to protect you." Finally, with tears in her eyes, she said yes. When we get married, we didn't have a fancy ceremony or party. Instead, we distributed food to the less fortunate. Everyone congratulated us, and we were really happy. Afterward, I chose to return to America alone for work to support Susan. We rarely stayed in the same place, often in areas without internet. So, I needed to be in America to stay connected and provide a base for her to return to whenever she needed. That's why I re-entered the workforce as an engineer. The introduction Susan gave me from the companies she'd worked with around the world led to positive interviews everywhere. I chose this major medical equipment manufacturer because they prioritized Doctors Without Borders activities, even having a dedicated department for it. The company valued my experience and expected me to be an immediate asset. I've been giving it my all this past year, trying to meet their expectations. I gradually built good relationships with colleagues and supervisors, though I still have issues with my boss, Smith. Tom, you've been living apart from your wife since you got married, huh? You sure it's not some romance scam? Despite being a department head, he has no real understanding of Doctors Without Borders. It seems he has a relative who is an executive in the company, and I hate to say it, but he's more of a figurehead. He doesn't seem to be involved in any important work, so he's always less busy than other employees. That's why he's so annoyingly curious about my personal life. It's a real marriage, not a scam. We met, fell in love, and then got married. I answer him casually, but he always tries to prolong the conversation. Your wife is much older than you, right? Besides, she is a doctor. I can see why she'd choose someone like you. I really don't think there's any love there. Ah, well, no need to worry about us. We do have love. He looked unimpressed with my response and walked away. I sighed and got back to my piled-up paperwork. As I was sorting through documents, Emma from the next desk struck up a conversation. Tom, did you know his wife is really young? He's around 50 and she's about 30. Yet, he goes around calling other women old. What's with his obsession with youth? She is a 23-year-old young lady and often shares office gossip with me. I see. You get a lot of attention from him too, right? She made a face. I think older people can be great, but someone like he is just creepy. It's like anyone young will do for him. It's not about age, it's about what's inside. I totally agreed with her perspective. No matter how old Susan is, I love her for who she is. Last night, Susan sent me a picture, looking cheerful. Currently, she's at a refugee camp in the Middle East, caring for malnourished children. In the photo, she was smiling, surrounded by local kids. Despite their thin frames, each child's eyes sparkled with vitality, a sign that her efforts are successful. I am relieved. She looked like a mother to those kids. I remembered her once saying, I consider myself a second mother to the children I work with. Even without children of my own, I feel like I have kids all over the world. I nodded in agreement with her sentiment, recalling the conversation vividly. I opened the email again, just to glance at the picture one more time. She really is a wonderful person. Oops. Sorry. I snapped back to reality at Emma's apologetic voice. Sorry, what's up? I asked. Oh, no, I was just, that photo. Is that your wife? I'm sorry, I was peeking. She pointed to the screen of my computer. That's no problem. You're right. This is my wife. Opening personal emails on my computer at work is not something I should be doing. It's been a whole year since we got married, and I haven't seen her, so naturally, I feel lonely. Well, your wife has such a nice smile. She's naturally beautiful, and more than that, it's a smile that comes from the heart. I felt genuinely happy when Emma complimented Susan. After watching her look at the photo for a while, I said, okay, back to work, and closed the computer. No matter how lonely I am, work is work. I need to work diligently in America to support Susan if anything happens. I changed my mind and focused on work. A few days later, when I arrived at the office, there was a photo on my desk. It was of a young mother and a small child, strangers to me. As I wondered about it, Smith rushed over. Good morning, Tom. That's a photo of my wife and child. I thought it turned out well, so I decided to give a copy to everyone in the department. So, this is his wife. Just like the rumors, a couple with a significant age difference. Your wife is quite beautiful, and your kid is adorable. I couldn't say it out loud, but his wife was too beautiful for him. Of course. My wife was a former model. Feel free to display this on your desk. I guess you can't expect children from your wife, considering she's older. That's why you shouldn't marry an older woman. Excuse me, Mr. Smith. Could you please take back what you just said? Looking baffled, he replied. Huh? I haven't said anything strange. Your wife is not of childbearing age. That's why it would have been better to marry a younger wife. I'm just stating the obvious. I was trembling with anger, almost ready to punch this incredibly rude boss. How can you say that? We're fine without children. That's when Emma chimed in. Mr. Smith, that's workplace bullying. It's also sexual harassment and emotional abuse. I looked at her, and she seemed angry too. Wait, what are you talking about? Where's the harassment? I wish you wouldn't make such accusations. Do you both understand that my relative is in the upper management and still talk back to me like this? I was worried about losing my job, but I couldn't let his remarks slide. As I was pondering what to do, Emma boldly replied, I don't mind, even if I get transferred or demoted, but you owe Tom an apology for the disrespectful things you said about him and his wife. I was surprised by her courage, and also I was astounded by Smith's ignorance. Even after Emma's strong words, he said, children are expected when you get married, right? I didn't misspeak by saying you chose to marry someone who can't have them. There's nothing to apologize for. Enough, give me back the photo. Oh my, what a terrible morning. He snatched the photo from us and walked away. I repeatedly apologized and thanked Emma, who was still furious, trying to calm her down. Though it should have been me who was angry, I was grateful she stood up for me. A month passed. Smith blatantly ignored Emma and me. It didn't bother us since it didn't affect our work. However, after a month, he suddenly came to my desk. He was oddly smiling. Tom, about next month's anniversary party. It seems that employees with spouses are now expected to attend together with their partners. I remembered seeing something about the anniversary party in the company newsletter. I thought attending as a couple was the norm, but Susan probably couldn't make it. My wife is too busy with work to attend, I replied. He sneered and said, Are you sure? All employees aspiring for promotion are making arrangements to come with their spouses. It's fine if you're not interested in that. But surely, not being able to show your wife off isn't the reason, right? I felt anger rising in me again. But before I could react, he strolled back to his desk, humming a tune. Forget his comments. Your wife is doing important work. Don't worry about it, Emma whispered to me. I agreed. She was right. But that night, I received surprising news from Susan. She was coming back to America in 2 weeks for a short visit. After the card project is completed successfully, it seems that there will be a month left before the next dispatch. I jumped for joy. I finally get to meet her. I had created a place in here for times like this. We had a great time talking on the phone about where she would go and what she would eat when she returned to America. During that time, I also informed her about the anniversary party. She thought positively, saying, I'll definitely go with you. I'm very happy to have such an opportunity. Thus, we decided to attend together. 2 weeks later, we finally had the day to meet again after a long time. We spent each day feeling very happy. So to speak, this is our first day together since we got married. Our newlywed life together was rosy. Then, the day of the party came. Susan was in a classy dress, which was rental. It suited her. However, her hair and skin were a little rough after getting sunburned in Africa, so she said she would go out with minimal hair and makeup. When we entered the party venue of a luxury hotel, about half of the employees were in pairs. I also took Susan next to me and acted confidently. However, she seemed a little strange. Hey, do I look weird? I feel like people are staring at me. I told her that wasn't the case, but she seemed a little put off. Then Smith and his wife appeared. Hi, Tom. Let me introduce you to my wife, Olivia. She's beautiful, isn't she? Olivia was a former model, so she was more beautiful and had a better figure than anyone else in the audience. I also tried to introduce Susan. Nice to meet you, Olivia. This is my wife. Before I could finish my words, Smith interrupted me and started talking. Oh dear, is this Tom's mother? He said it out loud on purpose, so the employees gathered around. Not to be outdone, I shouted back. No, this is my wife, Susan. As the small crowd of people surrounding us fell silent, it was Olivia who spoke next. Wife, I thought it was your mother. Her beautiful face was distorted and ugly. Smith said, as if following her words. That's right. Everyone would think she's your mother. With that light makeup and messy hair. Did you want to stand out by bringing your parent to the party, Tom? Susan covered her face. I hated the stubbornness of the couple. The other employees looking at us were chatting about something to themselves. You made his mother cry. Why don't you take her to the exit? Oh, yeah. Ma'am, you're probably uncomfortable, so let's get out. I couldn't take it anymore. Stop it. I mentioned she's my precious wife. If you say anything more sarcastic to her, I won't tolerate it, not even from my boss or my boss's wife. When I yelled at them, Mr. and Mrs. Smith still laughed and said spitefully, "Oh, dear. He doesn't want to forgive you, honey." Huh? That's a lot of power, even though you don't have any backing. It was at that time. A middle-aged man made his way through the crowd and came out in front of us. The man said with a pale face, "Susan, isn't it you?" When she heard that voice, she looked up, saw the man, and her eyes widened. "William." While I was still unable to understand the situation, the next time, I heard a female voice. "Excuse me. Please let me go through." The woman who came out in front of us after the man had a face that looked just like Susan. "Ah, Susan, it's really you." The middle-aged man, the woman who looked like Susan, and Susan, they all cried as they hugged each other's shoulders. All I could do was watch it, except I heard Smith's trembling voice. "President and ma'am." After they cried for a while, Susan introduced me to them. "This is my husband, Tom. He's such a wonderful man." Then she introduced me to the two of them. "This woman is my twin sister. This is her husband, William, the president of this company." According to subsequent explanations, the woman is Susan's older sister, and her name is Sophia. In fact, this medical device manufacturing company was founded by the twins' grandfather. Susan only had 2 female twins in her generation, so she had no choice but to take a son-in-law to take over the company. That person is this middle-aged man, William. I felt embarrassed that I was working without knowing the face of the president of my company. The president had been treated as a potential son-in-law at Sophia's house from an early stage, and from Susan's perspective, it seemed like they were in love with each other. But she thought that if she had been there, her sister would have passed on that happiness to her, so she left home as soon as she got her medical license and never returned. William and Sophia got married and took over the family business, and they have been waiting for the day when Susan would come home. The 3 of them have always been good friends. As for Susan, she always gives her away to someone else without thinking about her own happiness. But it's wonderful that she found a wonderful partner and was able to meet her again like this. What a beautiful day. Sophia was so happy that he burst into tears. With the exact same gesture, Susan cried with joy as well. The president also told me with a big smile, "Tom, thank you for your continued support of Susan." I expressed my appreciation to him. The president then glared at Mr. and Mrs. Smith and said, "Smith, you said a lot of things to my precious sister-in-law. Your wife seems pretty, too, but she doesn't seem to know the manners in a situation like this." Smith shrank back, but Olivia was still glaring at him in frustration. Apparently, she was an extremely strong-willed wife. Normally, if you saw an old woman like that, you'd think she was his mother. What's wrong? Ignoring the president's request to stop, she continues speaking without admitting her fault. The most important thing for a woman is whether she's pretty or not. A beautiful woman is the most important. That's why I'm better than Sophia, no matter how much I'm the president's wife. Of course, I'm better than Susan. I don't know how she was treated and lived her life, but I thought that Olivia was a person who grew up to be a good adult, leaving behind all the things she should have known in life. It is lucky to have been born with a beautiful appearance, coming from a good family background, and was born in America, where there are no inconveniences. But I've met many people who don't. I have met many children today who have no food to eat, no water to drink, and no place to study. Also, for those who I want to help and spend my time and money, I think the most beautiful human being is one with a beautiful heart. People who can laugh even if they can't see the future. People who enjoy the happiness of others as if it were their own. People who can share it with others if they have a lot. People who can hand over important things to. The wife I chose is that kind of person. Therefore, I don't really think that Sophia is beautiful. She was still talking. "Hey honey, you always say that. This is a good opportunity to say it. President, make my husband a director as soon as possible. There are relatives, too, in the executive seat." Hearing her words, Smith finally crouched down, hiding his face. The president heard it and said, "Smith, what do you mean? I'm sure our company prohibits hiring connections." Then, a man who appeared to be his relative took a step forward and answered tremblingly, "Oh, no, you see, this guy will never get promoted." Olivia yelled angrily, "What the hell are you talking about?" The bad things were compounding, and there was another person who came before us. It was Emma. She stood in front of her and said, "I'm a co-worker of Tom. My name is Nana. I'm the daughter of the president. I don't want my connections to be used, so I work under my father's maiden name." I was working without even knowing that she was the president's daughter. Emma then turned to the president and said, "It's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of the whole department. But Manager Smith is harassing the department a lot. I've recorded myself, so you can listen to it later, Dad. Even his manager's position lacks power, I think." Then Olivia screamed with the appearance of a devil. It's not like a little girl is interjecting. A father who hears such a thing is a father too. My husband is the one who deserves to be the next president. Then Emma stood in front of her with a calm face and said, "Your husband is always making advances on me. Due to my young age. There are many other young female employees who have been sexually harassed. I have also recorded it, so you can listen to it." This time, Olivia couldn't say anything. She looked at the manager with a broken expression on his face. I too stood there unable to say anything as too many facts were spilling out all at once. Only the joyful classical music echoed through the venue. In such an awkward atmosphere, Susan was the first to make a move. She approached Olivia. Then, in a calm tone, she spoke to the couple. "You're very beautiful. Mr. Smith also cares about you very much. You too, right? You were worried too much about my husband and said a lot of things. Please talk to him often and make things up quickly." Even though she said a lot of mean things to me, she looked like an angel to me because she was able to forgive me and say things like that. She's in a better position to be angry than anyone else. Thanks to her kindness, calmness gradually returned to the venue. Several people from the crowd came up to her side and said, "You know, I stared at you because you looked exactly like the president's wife. I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable." They apologized. Other employees forced themselves to praise Smith, saying things like, "He has some good qualities. He's easygoing in his department, so it's kind of easygoing." Even Olivia said to her husband, "Did I say too much to you? I just said it because you listened to me. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." I was once again impressed by the incredible purity of Olivia's energy. Even in the project, when she is around, both anxious children and adults become relieved. Even though the staff and I don't have enough food for tomorrow, I feel like I'll be fine. She has everything, including family status, money, and good looks, but even if she lost all of those things, I still think she has the most beautiful heart in the world, and I have to live my life so that I don't feel ashamed of my wife. Thanks to her, we managed to recover from the awkwardness of the party and were able to safely complete our anniversary celebration. After the party, we planned to use the remaining days of her stay in America to go on a short trip, but I canceled it. I thought she should spend the rest of her days with William and Sophia. When I told her, she unusually expressed her disappointment. I was really looking forward to it. I felt happy but firmly responded, "They were probably looking forward to seeing you even more than me." Honestly, I was really looking forward to the trip too, but we have a long life ahead together. There's plenty of time for us. Giving up a few days for them is nothing in comparison. I decided to marry her with the commitment to bring her happiness. Her happiness is my happiness, after all. Susan thanked me profusely and enjoyed her remaining days with William and Sophia. I was invited several times, but as a regular employee, I didn't have the courage to spend private time with the president. Gradually, I started to feel that maybe I could join them one day. After she returned to conflict zones, my department underwent some changes. Firstly, Smith suddenly started learning about Doctors Without Borders. Everyone silently observed, not pointing out his previous ignorance. Then, Emma left the company. She decided to go back to university to pursue a medical career, inspired by Susan. "I want to be a cool woman like Susan. My brother's there, so the company will be fine," she said. The president and Sophia were supportive of her decision. I believed that Emma, fearless and strong, would surely become a great doctor. On a day with a pleasant breeze, I stood on the company rooftop, looking up at the sky and thought to myself, "Susan, your influence is incredible. I'll keep working harder and harder." "Get out of the way. Watch where you're going, you incompetent." As I was helping a woman who had fallen at the Times Square, Michael glared at me, clicking his tongue. I was just trying to help someone. I can understand why I have to be spoken to so harshly." As I struggled to find a response, he snorted and walked away. I was absolutely furious. However, it was only a matter of time before he couldn't act so superior towards me anymore. "My name is Daniel, 22 years old. I'm graduating from college next year. Right now, I'm actively job hunting. I've always been interested in foreign countries, and in college, I majored in foreign cultures and French. But apart from French, my academic skills are terrible. I managed to get into the university I'm attending now by studying hard. My high school teacher and my parents were both happy about my college admission. My university is a new one and not well known, but I chose it because it focuses on French and international exchange. Even though it's considered a lower-tier university by others, the opportunity to study about foreign countries feels like heaven to me. One of the dreams I achieved at university, immersed in study every day, was a short-term study abroad. My university has several partner schools overseas, offering opportunities for short-term study abroad several times a year. My family isn't wealthy, and even my college education was funded by scholarships, but I saved up desperately by working 3 part-time jobs. Juggling 3 jobs along with my studies was no easy feat. However, I worked tirelessly, sparing little time for sleep, all for the sake of studying abroad. Seeing my efforts, my parents decided to help me financially for the study abroad program. Thanks to them, I was able to go abroad successfully. Though it wasn't a long-term study, it was sufficient to improve my French skills. This experience only fueled my passion for overseas experiences more, and I began to think that if I were to find a job, it should be with a global corporation where I can use French and interact with overseas partners. Therefore, I decided to apply mainly to major global corporations. Honestly, companies like these aren't really meant for someone from a lower-tier university like me, but I wanted to give it a try. My parents supported me in this endeavor. Nervously, I faced my first job interview. The first round was a written exam. The written test included mathematics and general knowledge, subjects I'm weak in. I had studied hard for this day. Perhaps due to my efforts, the written exam felt easier than I expected. I managed to answer all the questions within the allotted time. Maybe, just maybe, I might have a chance. I was filled with hope, but I don't have the luxury to be filled with joy over this. I need to quickly start practicing for the next interview. I involved my parents in my interview practice. "So, why do you want to work for our company?" my father asked, playing the role of my interviewer with a slight smile. My mother, watching from the side, scolded him. "Honey, please take this seriously. Daniel's future is at stake." "Yes, you're right. My parents have always put me first. I decided I must succeed in my job hunt to repay them. However, I know all too well that finding a job is not that easy. So, I'm determined to give it my all and secure a job." That's how I was feeling. Then one day, the results of the first round of the job interview I had recently taken arrived by mail. My mother looked at me with eyes as if she were seeing something terrifying and handed me the envelope with the results. I took a deep breath and slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a notice of passing the first round. My mother and I jumped for joy right there. Then she called my father to report the good news. He left his work early to come home. He hurried back home, which surprised me. Then he hugged me, sharing in the joy. "It's too early to celebrate. The interview is next. Put your spirit into it and do your best. You can do it, Daniel. Go for it." With my parents' expectations on my shoulders, I faced the interview. The first job interview I ever attempted. I felt like I might fall apart from the tension. Dragging my heavy feet, I entered the building where the interview was to be held. Inside, there were many businessmen in suits walking around. If I pass, will I be working here too? Could I become a cool businessman like them? While thinking these things, I saw a few candidates who seemed to be there for job interviews walking ahead. I did a double take. Among them was Michael. He was somewhat of a celebrity among his college students majoring in French. He's not a returnee from abroad, but he taught himself and won several speech contests. Recently, he's been sharing methods of studying French on a famous video site, gaining many fans. I was one of those many fans. I couldn't believe that someone like him was also attending an interview for the same company. Is the person in front of me really Michael? I was skeptical. But he was indeed the real one. In person, he looked much cooler than I had imagined. I watched him with a gaze full of admiration. However, I had no idea that this expectation would soon be dashed. Upon arriving at the conference room where the interview was to be held, we were instructed by an employee to sit and wait. The person guided to sit next to me was Michael. Sitting next to me means we're in the same interview group. I couldn't hide my surprise at this unexpected situation. I felt restless waiting for my turn. Glancing to the side, I noticed he seemed unusually calm. With skills like his, job hunting must feel easy. I wished I could borrow some of his courage. So, I gathered my courage and decided to speak to him. "You're Michael, right? I've seen your videos online." He looked at me in surprise, then began to look smug. "You've seen them? Thanks. By the way, which university did you graduate from?" Overwhelmed by his confident demeanor, I mentioned the name of my university in a small voice. Then, he looked at me with an expression of surprise. A guy from such a low-tier university has no chance of passing the employment test for this global corporation, right? I couldn't believe that Michael, whom I had respected, would look down on me like this. I was dumbfounded. Then he turned to a woman sitting on the opposite side and said, "This isn't a place for people from low-tier universities, right?" The woman, addressed by him, looked down without responding, appearing troubled. He kept looking at me and sneering until he was called by the interviewers. Honestly, I was deeply shocked to find out he was this kind of person. Then, it was our turn for the interview. 5 of us, including Michael and myself, entered the conference room simultaneously. My nervousness peaked. Struggling to control my shaking legs, I took a seat in the designated chair. There were 3 interviewers, seated in a row. The person in the middle, evidently a higher-ranking official, had an air of gravitas. His presence only heightened my anxiety. One of the interviewers asked us to start with self-introductions. Starting with Michael, everyone began to introduce themselves. All the other college students were from elite, top-tier universities. And there I was, from a university that nobody had probably ever heard of, a lower-tier one. Gradually, my confidence began to fade. Then, it was finally my turn. With a trembling voice, I squeezed out my introduction. But my voice was quiet and shaky, completely lacking confidence. "Could you please speak up a bit?" asked an interviewer, with a hint of a sigh. Growing even more flustered, I stammered an apology. "Sorry." Throughout the interview, I remained unconfident and hesitant. From my first interview, it was a disaster. Nothing I had practiced was coming out right. I felt frustrated. I didn't want to let down my parents, who were supporting me. "Do you have any final comments?" asked the interviewer. Without hesitation, I raised my finger, drawing everyone's eyes to me. With a loud voice, I said, "I was nervous today and couldn't express any of my thoughts. If given another chance, I can definitely show my true self in the interview. Please give me that chance." I am well aware that job hunting is not so lenient that simply asking for a chance would grant one. However, if there was a chance, I wanted to try just one more time. Everyone in the conference room, including the interviewers and the other college students, looked at me in surprise, but I didn't care. I remained looked at the interviewers until they indicated the end of the session. After the interview, I was suddenly overwhelmed with fatigue. It had been a long time since I felt so tense. As I was gathering my belongings to head home, Michael approached me with a laugh. "What was that pathetic interview all about? You're definitely going to be rejected. I can't imagine a big corporation like this accepting someone like you." I looked down. He was speaking kindly to other students from top-tier universities. Clearly, he was looking down on me, a student from a lower-tier university. Why do I have to be subjected to this? What have I ever done to him? I was beyond angry. I was even shocked. Then he invited some elite university students nearby. "Since we're here, let's all go for coffee." Only from top universities, though. So I, a lower-tier university student, am invisible in his eyes. Whatever. I just want to go home and rest. I quickly left the place. When I got home, my mother approached me with a worried look. "How was the interview?" I couldn't look her in the face. Without saying anything, I went straight to my room. Then, she came into my room and handed me a magazine. On the cover was Michael. That's right. I have completely forgotten that I reserved this issue a few weeks ago when it was announced that Michael, the current popular French-language video creator, would be featured. Now, I didn't even want to see his face. The Michael I had admired was just a facade. The real one I encountered today was his darker side. I decided to forget about him. From then on, I stopped watching the videos of Michael, whom I used to enjoy so much. Weeks passed. I hadn't heard back yet from the major global corporation where I interviewed. While waiting for their response, I applied to other companies and spent time researching them, thinking I might have failed the interview with the global corporation. I had almost given up. Then, my phone rang. It was a call from the number of that company. With trepidation, I answered the phone. A woman from the HR department said, "You passed the second round of interviews." I couldn't believe it. What? I passed? Are you sure it's me? My panicked reaction made the HR woman chuckle. "Daniel, you've passed the second round. The next step is the final interview." In my heart, I did a victory pose. I rushed to the living room to tell my parents. My father threw the newspaper he was holding onto the floor and cheered. My mother cried tears of joy. For me, who had thought I surely failed, this was like a dream. Filled with happiness, thinking my sincerity had reached the interviewers, I prepared for the final interview. With even more effort than before, I focused on researching the global corporation and refining my reasons for applying. A few days later, I was hurrying to the headquarters for the final interview. Because of a sudden stomachache and a long stay in the restroom, I started later than I planned. I desperately wanted to avoid being late for the final interview. Then, I was close to the headquarters building in sight. I could make it without being late. All I had to do was going through the Times Square. I sighed in relief. But then, right in front of me, a woman with blonde hair and striking features fell dramatically. She struggled to get up. Upon closer inspection, I noticed a white cane lying nearby, and it appeared she was using a prosthetic eye. It seemed the woman was visually impaired. Yet, no one around seemed willing to help her. Instinctively, I reached out to help her stand up. That's when it happened. A man bumped into me. Turning around, I saw it was Michael, the last person I wanted to encounter. He seemed hurried and irritated. "Get out of the way. Watch where you're going, you incompetent." Was it really necessary to be so harsh? Right. He was also heading to the final interview. He must be in a hurry because it's close to the interview time. Despite feeling annoyed, I ignored him. He broke out and hurried away. The woman, though startled, thanked me, saying, "Thank you. I really appreciate it." But it seemed she had hurt her leg when she fell. She was limping. I couldn't just leave her like this. Checking my watch, I saw there were 20 minutes left until the interview. I had just enough time to help her to the station. I asked the woman, "Where do you need to go? I can accompany you if you'd like." She replied, "I need to go to that building, but it's okay. I don't want to trouble you." Coincidentally, the building she mentioned was where my interview was also scheduled. "No, I'm headed to the same place for an appointment. Let's go together." I took her hand and together we headed towards the building where my interview was scheduled. I've always been the type to help those in need. Since we were going to the same place, I thought I might as well assist her. She repeatedly apologized and expressed her gratitude. I usually come by car, but I was in a hurry today and couldn't wait, so I walked. I'm not used to this route, and it's difficult to walk. "I'm really sorry. Are you sure about the time?" She was concerned about my time. Although it was a close call, I pretended everything was fine. "Don't worry about the time. It's fine," I assured her. Hearing this, she smiled to me again. In a few minutes, we safely arrived at the building. It was 10 minutes before my interview was to start. I made it to the building without being late and with time to spare. I have an appointment on the 10th floor, so I'll take my leave here. Just as I was about to walk away, the woman exclaimed in surprise, "The 10th floor? I'm going there too." The 10th floor was solely occupied by the major global corporation where I was supposed to have my final interview. Could it be that this woman was also going there for an interview? The woman was not dressed in a suit but in casual attire. No, she probably wasn't here for an interview. Puzzled, I said, "What a coincidence. Let's go together," and we both entered the elevator. Upon reaching the 10th floor, I saw other job seekers like myself, seated and waiting for their turn for the final interview. I asked the woman, as I guided her, What's your business on the 10th floor? Just then, Michael appeared before us and laughed upon seeing me and the woman. Hey, incompetent. Are you here for the final interview too? And today, with your not-so-smart-looking girlfriend? Well, you'll probably fail, but do your best. The woman next to me whispered, "He's incredibly rude," a comment I didn't miss. The previously calm woman spoke in a different tone, almost muttering. I was so surprised by her sudden change that I was speechless. Michael, oblivious to her comment, continued to hurl insults at me. The other job seekers quietly observed the exchange between him and me. People from lower-tier universities like you are not needed anywhere. Only smart students from top universities like me are in demand. He looked at me with disdain. Why do I have to endure such remarks? Are students from top universities really that superior? I felt a strong sense of indignation and was reaching my limit of patience. I am well aware that I'm from a lower-tier university and not an elite like you, Michael. But attending an interview is my right. I tried to keep my voice low as we were in the interview venue. However, he seemed unfazed by my retort, heaving a loud sigh. I am more elite than you. I'm sure I'll thrive in this company. I'm more valuable than you, so challenging me is premature by a century. Then, the woman beside me suddenly erupted like a volcano. Excuse me, I don't know who you are, but you're incredibly rude. Can't you just keep your foul mouth shut? Her voice was so loud that it echoed throughout the 10th floor. Interviewers from the conference room came out to the hallway to see what was happening. Michael, while glaring at her, started to back away. Realizing the situation, I offered an embarrassed smile and said, "I apologize for causing a disturbance." I was inwardly panicking. Causing a commotion at the final interview could only lead to an obvious outcome. But the woman, still seemingly furious, continued her tirade. Why are you apologizing? Isn't that man the one at fault? I can't accept this. She looked ready to yell again. Michael, acting as if he had nothing to do with the situation, walked away towards the back. The woman seemed about to chase after him, but I grabbed her arm in desperation. Today is a crucial day for me, my final interview. I don't want to cause any more trouble. Finally, she calmed down at my words. Relieved, yet it was too late. The other job seekers and employees were all looking at us. Michael looked back at us and laughed. That was it, I thought. I was filled with a sense of despair. Sighing and hanging my head, I noticed a foreign man approaching us. His face was familiar. He was the man I had seen frequently in the company brochures during my research. A face anyone applying for an interview at this company would recognize. Yes, he was the president of the company. The president was walking towards us. Was I about to be disqualified even before my interview by the president himself? I kept my head down. But then, the president stopped in front of the woman. Elizabeth, what brought you here in such a hurry? Elizabeth, the president knew this woman. Surprised, I watched their exchange. Dad, I made lunch for you, but you forgot it. I rushed here to give it to you. Elizabeth, the woman, looked somewhat annoyed at the president. She was the president's daughter. I was astounded. Michael, who had been watching from a distance, also stood there with his mouth open in shock. Did you walk here all by yourself? Are you okay? The president asked Elizabeth, looking concerned. Pointing towards me, she said, "This kind gentleman helped me when I fell and brought me here. Despite having his final interview today, he didn't care about the time and was very kind. There were others who just left me there when I fell." Then, the president peered into my face and grasped my hand. "You are a lifesaver to my daughter. I truly thank you. She is visually impaired. It could have been dangerous if you weren't there. I'm really grateful. What's your name?" Calling me a lifesaver is too much. I just did what any person should do. "My name is Daniel." Daniel, huh? I'll remember that. The president seemed moved by my words. Michael was looking at us, biting his lip in frustration. Then Elizabeth whispered something to the president. "There's someone here who looks down on good people, saying that students from lower-tier universities are not needed in this company. I can forgive that." The president's expression changed upon hearing her words. Then he raised his voice. "Is what Elizabeth says true? If so, someone who looks down on others is not needed in our company." Who looked down on Daniel here? The job seekers waiting for the final interview fell silent, and no one pointed out Michael. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he didn't raise his hand. probably thinking he could stay quiet since Elizabeth is visually impaired. Such a rotten character. But then, at that moment, a woman pointed at Michael. She was the one who had seemed troubled when Michael addressed her during the second round of interviews. She mustered the courage to speak out. "Excuse me for interrupting. My name is Ashley, and I'm here for the final interview today. The man who looked down on Daniel is that man over there." Michael looked shocked at Ashley, and then, in a fluster, said, "I never looked down on him." "Right, Daniel. He was seeking agreement from me, whom he had belittled all this time. What does he want now? After all his derogatory comments about me being from a lower tier university, now he turns to me for help when his own position is threatened. How convenient." My response was clear. "Michael, when you called me incompetent, was that just a joke? And when you said students from lower tier universities like me are not needed anywhere, were you not looking down on me?" I repeated what he had said to me. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. "I don't remember saying such things." As he, increasingly unable to articulate his words, was becoming more desperate, it was Elizabeth's words that delivered the final blow. Elizabeth then added fuel to the fire, looking at him and saying loudly, "You're the incompetent one, aren't you? You definitely made those derogatory comments. I remember them well. You even said I didn't look smart, right?" The president laughed upon hearing her words. "Michael, was it? She graduated top of her class from a prestigious university. I'd say she's smarter than you. Anyway, I have no interest in interviewing you. Please leave." "But that's..." Michael was in disbelief. Yet, he did not give up. He began to express his apology toward the president. "President, I'm terribly sorry for causing a disturbance. Please let me have the interview." I was surprised to see him, a person of such pride, begged in front of everyone. Despite his desperate pleas, the president didn't even glance at him. Eventually, security guards arrived and physically removed him from the premises. Even as he was being escorted out, he continued pleading, "President, please listen to me." The guards carried Michael to the elevator and took him outside. Elizabeth, after handing the lunchbox to the president, smiled and said, "You'll do great. Good luck with your final interview." Then, with her white cane, she left. I felt a warmth in my heart, thanks to her. After Michael's departure, peace returned to the 10th floor, and the final interviews proceeded as if nothing had happened. Finally, it was my turn. As usual, my heart felt like it was about to burst with nervousness. When called by a member of the HR department, I responded as loudly as I could and entered the conference room. There were 5 interviewers seated, with the president in the center. Contrary to my nervousness, the interviewers looked kindly and even smiled. Especially the president, who said, "Don't be nervous. It's okay." He seemed to be trying to ease my tension. I took a deep breath, taking the president's words to heart, and calmed myself. Thanks to his encouragement, I was able to speak about my motivation and passion with less tension than expected. At the end, the president asked me with a smile about the company's corporate philosophy. I answered clearly, "It's a company that is kind to both oneself and others." The president nodded and applauded, looking at me. It was a perfect final interview, better than any of my practice sessions. I bowed deeply and left the conference room. The results would be announced in 2 weeks. Holding my bag, I left the building, feeling uplifted. To my surprise, Elizabeth was standing at the entrance of the building. It was quite cold outside, and I wondered what she was doing there. Curious, I tapped her shoulder. "What are you doing here?" Responding to my question, she smiled. "I was waiting for you, Daniel. I wanted to thank you for helping me. How about we go for some coffee?" "Thank you. I'd love to," I replied. And we entered a nearby cafe together. I ordered coffee for both of us. She sipped her coffee, seeming to enjoy it. "Thank you so much for today. It was my first time trying to navigate that Times Square since losing my sight, and it was quite scary, but I was okay because of you. I'm glad I could help. But may I ask, how did you lose your sight?" I was hesitant to ask, but curiosity got the better of me. She then shared that she lost her vision last year due to an illness. She had a sad expression as she mentioned friends who drifted away after she got her prosthetic eyes. Instinctively, I reached out and held her hand. "Elizabeth, you're a kind person who stands up for others. With your kindness, you'll surely make new friends soon. Look, you've already made a friend in me." My words made her blush with happiness. We continued to chat, and before we knew it, over 2 hours had passed. Talking with her, I found myself increasingly drawn to her strong character. I wanted to know more about her. Taking a step I usually wouldn't, I asked for her contact information. It was rare for me, usually reserved, to initiate such a request. She happily agreed to exchange contact details. From then on, we started communicating and maintained a good friendship. 2 weeks passed, and the day of the final interview results arrived. My father took the day off from work and my mother abandoned her household chores, both waiting anxiously by the phone. Watching them made me more nervous, so I decided to wait in my room. The whole morning passed with no phone calls. I started to lose hope, but just as I was about to give up, the phone rang loudly, startling both of my parents. My mother answered the call, and then ran to me with the receiver. Hesitantly, I took the phone, recognizing the voice on the other end. "Daniel, you've been accepted. Are you ready to work hard for our company?" Having the president himself call to inform me of my success was overwhelmingly gratifying. Trembling with excitement, I managed to respond, "Yes, absolutely. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and I promise to work very hard. Thank you so much." Tears were streaming down my cheeks without my noticing. After the call ended, my parents hugged me and burst into tears. "You really did it, son. You've worked so hard for this." "Indeed. We must celebrate. I'll go buy your favorite turkey." In a flurry of excitement, they rushed out to shop. Once they left, I sent a message to Elizabeth, but to my surprise, she called me immediately. "Daniel, congratulations." She sounded even more excited than I was. I thanked her deeply for her support, and promised to express my gratitude properly later. After that incident, Michael stopped updating his video channel. Apparently, someone had recorded the commotion during the interview, and it went viral online. He faced a lot of criticism on the internet. It didn't take long for him to disappear from the video platform, likely unable to bear the cyberbullying. Moreover, after his true nature was exposed during the interview fiasco, I heard through the grapevine that his job search didn't go well and he ended up working part-time. It seemed like a fitting consequence for someone who had looked down on so many people. While I do feel a bit sorry for him, I hope he learns a valuable lesson about how demeaning others can deeply hurt them. He needs to experience and reflect on the consequences of his actions. 2 years have passed since I joined a major global corporation. Now, I work as a rising star in the overseas sales department. The job is challenging, but incredibly fulfilling. I truly feel grateful for having the opportunity to work here. "Daniel, you forgot something." Elizabeth approached me, tapping her white cane, and handed me a lunchbox. "Elizabeth, did you come here alone? That's dangerous. You're not alone anymore. You need to be careful." She playfully stuck her tongue out at me, making a teasing face. I couldn't help but laugh at her expression. Yes, I started dating her shortly after I joined a company. She's funny, strong-willed, and it was only a matter of time before I fell head over heels for her. It soon became impossible to imagine life without her. So, we decided to get married. The president was delighted, and more importantly, my parents were overjoyed. Not long after, Elizabeth and I were blessed with the news of a new life growing inside her. I'm truly happy now. As I look to the future, I'm determined to protect my family and continue working hard in my career.